Hello everyone, it's Thursday the 23rd of June and here in the UK something very important is happening. For some bizarre reason the whole country today is deciding whether or not they would like Great Britain to leave the European Union in a term that has been dubbed as Brexit for some strange reason. You know, obviously exit means leave, and the BR from Britain because, you know, they just want to pick two letters that will make it easier for the papers to scream something at us. So because there's a very important thing going on, and because I am deeply cynical about it, as I am about a great deal of things, we're going to talk about it. I've obviously had I've had propaganda, you know, coming through the post for for leaving and remaining. So we're going to have a little read through of both, so it's nice and fair and impartial, and we're going to see what's been going on, because I don't really know a great deal about the pros and cons of staying in or leaving the European Union. I just used my brain with my vote. I thought, well, what seems best? You know, bearing in mind I'm not going to be here next year, so I probably won't get to see much of the fallout from the decision. Makes it sound like I'm gonna off my because I'm going to Canada next year, so I'm not going to be here in the UK to know much about what's gone on. But nevertheless, I still voted with my brain. I think I made a smart decision with my vote, because the alternative seems absolutely ridiculous. So let's start with Remain, because that one was on top. So here's the leaflet. I'll put the leaflet on so you can have a look at that. Your neighbours and friends will be voting. Well, good, apart from the ones that haven't registered to vote. And a very handy quote from Martin here. I don't know who Martin is. My uncle, maybe? But other than that, unless it's the man in the photo. But I don't actually know who Martin is. So maybe that will be revealed to us later on in the leaflet. Martin is saying, I'm not going to let anybody else decide my family's future. Good. Well, other members of your family might want to chip in depending on their age and stuff like that. But good job, Martin, whoever you may be. Thank you. Can I decide? No, he's saying he's not going to let anybody else. So if Martin's going to be the only voter, then I hope he votes the right way. Because if that's the case, then my vote had absolutely no effect on the result, because sadly I'm not Martin. And that's it for the front page. It doesn't actually tell us whether this is a Remain or a Leave leaflet. It only says that on the back page, which I will show you now. So it opens with the big question, and it's literally quite a big question because it's quite a big font. Why vote? And to be fair, that's a very good question. The simple answer is because otherwise all this pointless talk for the past couple of months will have been absolutely useless, and everyone would have been getting really angsty over nothing, and we can't have that now, can we? So the first point, it's a once-in-a-generation vote. I'm sure the generations before me have had countless opportunities to vote on this matter. Unlike a general election where you can choose to elect a new government every 5 years, this vote is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to choose a Britain that is stronger, safer and better off. Again, we still don't even know who these people are arguing for. All it's saying now is that basically, yes, you can change your government every 5 years, but if you pick what you pick now is you're stuck with. You know, you think 5 years is a long time to be stuck with a rubbish government. You imagine how long it is when you're stuck with independence, is what they could be saying. But because this is a Remain leaflet, it also actually sounds like they're saying you could be stuck with the rest of Europe for a very long time. So the second point is that economic experts agree the UK is better off in the EU. which is fantastic. The biggest ever survey of Britain's top economists revealed 9 in 10 think leaving Europe would hit the UK economy and cause job losses and prices in our shops to rise. Get someone to proofread. Job losses. Losses has 3 S's in it. LOSSES. That study came from the Ipsos Mori poll of Royal Economic Society and the Society of Business Economists and Centre for Economic Performance. I don't know about you, but that's just a lot of words put together. You know, they may as well have written shovel band cushion rug. Biggest ever survey of Britain's top economists revealed 9 in 10 think that it makes it sound like they only asked 10. I couldn't name any of Britain's top economists. I would just like to stress I'm not trying to convey viewpoints or opinions on the matter here. What I'm trying to do is say how ridiculous all the propaganda that gets sent through the post is, because there's nothing here. All it's saying is that leaving the EU would cause job losses, but staying in the EU may very well cause job losses as well. You know, I think every which way we look, it's a loss-loss situation. I was reading an article about the economics of staying in or leaving the European Union, and fair enough, it was in The Sun, which is to serious journalism what eating a tub of butter is to maintaining a healthy lifestyle. This article basically said that if we stay in the EU, it's going to cost us a hell of a lot of money to remain a member of the EU. But if we leave, it's going to cost us a hell of a lot of money to not be in the EU. So either way, we're stuck. That was the same for a lot of the arguments that they were putting forward, apart from, interestingly enough, immigration. That was the only thing that had no sort of negative repercussions. If we leave, we get control of our borders and can stop the immigrants coming in. If we stay, then we don't, and they're all going to come back in. So it was kind of like, well, at least, you know, they can only give one viewpoint on immigration. Everything else they're balanced on, because the British papers are scaremongering and want everyone to hate a specific group, i.e. Turkish, Syrians and Muslims. Again, that's not my viewpoint. That is just generally what the UK media tries to do. I think the global media actually tries to do. I haven't got a particularly interesting viewpoint on, well, anything. But the papers do, and it's scaremongering, exaggeration and hyperbole to sell a product. The third point, I think this might be my favourite. The weight of evidence is overwhelming, as you can tell by reading through this leaflet of 3 points and a quote from Martin. From Richard Branson to J.K. Rowling, from Stephen Hawking to Alan Sugar, plus the heads of the Bank of England and Trades Union Congress. They don't name those people because who the hell could name the boss of the Bank of England and the Trade Union Congress? They all agree that we are better off in. For example, respected consumer champion Martin Lewis, famous for having a 10-minute segment on the ITV daytime show This Morning, says, on balance of probability, it is more likely we'll have less money in our pockets if we vote to leave. That doesn't convey the fact that he's in. That just says we'll have less money if we leave. You know, if we leave, we'll have less money. But, you know, none of the immigrants will come in. We can make our own laws and all that. Maybe he's trying to be objective, but can only think of one point to remain, and actually he's very heavily out. This is why I don't kind of like these propaganda leaflets, and I will always use the word propaganda for this sort of thing, because that is kind of what it is. They bill it up as information leaflets, but this leaflet doesn't actually contain any information on it at all. All it is just trying to sway your opinion to one way of thinking, which is generally what propaganda is. People publish that stuff and look what happens. Kim Jong-un publishes the propaganda, and now the whole of North Korea hates the Western world. Not the whole, I'm sorry, I'm tarring a country with the same brush here, but a lot of people over there don't like the Western world. And, you know, it's what Hitler did to the Jews, and how all that anti-Semitism came up was basically through propaganda and things like that. It's a dangerous tool, and the people behind these leaflets know exactly what they're doing. It's not information. There is no information that is tangible on here. We have a study conducted by 3 different companies, or maybe one company with a really long, obnoxious name that is so ambiguous it's unhelpful, and a quote from a man who appears on daytime television. So that was the leaflet for why we should remain in the European Union. Now I've got the what can only be described as pamphlet as opposed to flyer for the Leave campaign, and this one's got a lot of meat to it, so we're going to jump straight in. The first thing, obviously, the European Union and your family. The facts. Black, white and red on the front here, plus that opening sentence is literally like, it's like just straight for the jugular, straight in. So how does it affect you and your family? You don't want your family to die, do you? They will die if we stay in the EU. We are sending this to you as someone who cares about the future of Britain and fair access to our public services. This document is to help you make your decision in the referendum on Thursday the 23rd of June. I've already made my decision before reading this document, so it didn't help too much. Fact! Britain's official bill for EU membership is £19 billion per year, or £350 million every week. The cost of a new hospital. Bet you if we left, that money would not get spent on a new hospital. Call me cynical, but I don't think it will. You have to decide whether what we get back from the EU is worth this. To be fair, in my ignorance, I don't actually know what we get from the EU. I don't really know what we give to the EU either. So I can't really make a fair judgment on whether or not what we get out of the EU is worth the cost of a new hospital that won't get built. Fact! 5 new countries are in the queue to join the EU. Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Turkey. You have to decide whether this will help Britain, Europe, and fair access to public services. Again, this might just be my geographical ignorance, but I thought Albania was already in the EU. I mean, it's got to be in Europe because they're playing in the Euros at the moment, in the 2016 Euro World Cup. So they've got to be in Europe. So why not join the EU? It's kind of dressed up as like this big VIP club. Oh, you can only join if you can afford £350 million a week. You know, and that's an expensive membership, to be fair. But it's like, well, if you're in Europe, you should be able to just join the EU without it being questioned by some sort of propaganda leaflet. I don't know about Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia and Turkey. I don't know. I've never actually thought Turkey was in Europe. I always thought it kind of fell into Asia. I thought it was kind of on the border of Europe and Asia, but I'm not very good at geography. Macedonia, I thought, disbanded in the BCs. I thought that was a Roman... like that was an old name for a country in the Roman Empire. We need to decide whether or not those 5 countries joining will help Britain, Europe and fair access to public services. I'm sure it will help Britain and indeed Europe, because surely if more people join, that means that the membership fee probably won't be as high. It's the same way as if you're all going to chip in for a present for someone at work. You know, if you're going to buy them a nice expensive bottle of wine, you're going to buy them a £50 bottle of wine. If 2 of you join in, you've both got to pay 25 quid. If all of a sudden 10 of you are buying a present for them, hey, it's only a £5. Maybe it will hinder. Maybe, you know, as a lot of people seem to be concerned about, oh, all the immigrants will be coming over here and taking all the jobs. Well, you're not working anyway, so it ain't going to affect you, is it? Fair access to public services. This has come up again. I don't know what that means. Like, does that mean, you know, everyone gets a Oyster card or something like that? You know, if we leave, then everyone will get an Oyster card. If we don't, then all the people will be coming over here and stealing our Oyster cards and all that nonsense. I don't actually really understand what that means, and it hasn't done very well at explaining it either. The BBC says that Leave supporters are much more likely to vote than Remain supporters because few are happy with the EU. Does it? Do they? Do the BBC say that? There's no source for that. Yeah, just quickly scanning ahead. There's no source to say that that's what the entirety of the BBC says. But, you know, we can take their word for it. Few people are happy with the EU. No one actually knows what the EU does. How can you be happy with it if you don't know anything about it? It is important that people vote in this crucial referendum, whatever their view. There we go. Just keeping balanced. On a one-sided pamphlet, we're keeping balanced. Leave supporters are much more likely to vote than Remain supporters. That's because of change. People are more likely to vote for change because they want to see a change. Basically, that's the way it kind of is. People are less likely to vote for Remain because it's, oh, well, we've already got it. Which is kind of a really terrible way of thinking, because then you are going to get all the people that are voting to leave, then something's going to change. All the people that did want to vote Remain are now all of a sudden stuck in this situation they didn't want to be in. And they're going to whinge about it forever, and it's like, well, you should have damn voted. You should have proved the statistic wrong. But you didn't. Can I just say, I love making these videos. These videos are so fun to do. So now we have the inside spread, okay, and God, there's a lot of information here. Okay. The UK and the European Union. The facts. Because everything you've heard up until now is a lie. On 23 June, we face a choice. Is it safer to stay in the EU permanently or vote to leave and take back control? We aren't going to be in the EU permanently. That's a false truth. You know, that is not a fact. Because believe it or not, right, we can vote to leave. And I know that's crazy. It sounds ludicrous. But we can vote to leave. We are not permanently in the EU. Because we can turn around and go, we don't want to be in it anymore. And we can hold a referendum to leave. Oh my God, the TV's just gone out. Oh, now it's back. Ish. I don't know. I've missed a whole episode of Come Dine With Me filming this, right? Oh no, priorities. If you're not sure which way to vote, just vote to stay. Surely. Because if you do that, then at least if we're not happy here, then that kind of buys you more time to make up your mind. If you vote Remain, then you can stay in the EU, and then actually if you do make up your mind you don't like it, then we'll hold another referendum in another generation's time and figure it out and leave. There are unfortunately people that are making rash decisions just based on the fact that they don't know what to do, and it's probably going to come back to bite the UK, Europe and them, just because they acted and voted in a way that they weren't sure about and just went, well, anything's got to be better than this because someone else says so. You know, I feel like sometimes inaction is the best action. And I think this is one of those times. It's a big decision, and there may not be another chance to vote for years. As we've already established, the EU is not a permanent fixture. And as they have just clarified and grossly backpedaled on what they've just said, remain in the EU permanently or vote leave now, because we may not get another chance for a long time. But here are some facts, because we need some facts now as opposed to false truths. Over 250,000 people migrate to the UK from the EU every year. They were bound to open their first fact on immigration, because that's what everyone's concerned about. That's the big thing that people are fussing over on this referendum. It's not whether or not we should leave the EU, it's whether we should take control of our borders, as they say. It's not whether or not we'd be better off or worse off staying in or leaving the European Union. It's whether or not we can put a cap on people coming over here and taking our jobs, which is unfortunate because now people have got this kind of warped perception of what they're actually changing. This is the equivalent of a city the size of Newcastle every year. Now that is scary, getting a whole nother load of Geordies in the country every year. EU law means all members must accept the free movement of people, which is a good thing normally. That's what allows us to just decide, hey, you know what, I want to go down to the south of France for a few days. You can just hop on a train and go and do that. You know, you don't need any kind of extra formal documentation other than your passport. Like when me and Liam went to Minecon 4 years ago. Wow. When we went to Minecon, we just got on a coach, got on the ferry at Dover, had to show our passports, got off the ferry at Calais, showed our passports again. And that was it. We were just in France, no questions asked. And I think that's a good thing to be able to do that. Okay, maybe, you know, maybe there are certain limits to that, you know. It does mean that people can just come and go as they please, and a side effect of that is that countries are going to fill up with people that are emigrating. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a common thing in the world at the moment that a minority are spoiling it for the majority. You know, a lot of people are emigrating to do a good thing. They're trying new experience. I'm going to Canada to live and work and just to have a good time and do something different and exciting and amazing for myself and just have some fun. Go out there for a year and then come back and just do something different. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are going to come over and then just sponge, basically. The screening process to get into Canada was mental. You know, they want to make sure that you're not going over there to sponge. But unfortunately, some people do. And as a result of that, an entire group is just getting tarred with the same brush, and it's not fair, not right. The leaflet does, in fairness, go on to mention what I've just said. Many immigrants contribute to our society. It's a fact. They do. They also have an impact on public services, which over here is stuff like, I guess, the NHS, like I was saying earlier, buses, trains, all that sort of thing. Obviously, it makes sense. The more people you have in a country, the more strain there's going to be on all of your public services and stuff like that. Experts disagree on the overall effect. Then it just shuts down the point. Many immigrants contribute to our society. However, they also put a strain on our public services. The experts can't decide. Well, how helpful is that? Why put the thing in there? The experts can't decide, so how the bloody hell are you going to decide? That's what that's saying. You're going to decide by panicking and making the wrong decision. The EU is expanding to include Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia and Turkey, as has already been discussed. When we joined, there were just 9 member states in the whole of Europe. In the whole of Europe, there were just 9 people that were a member of the European Union. Now there are 28! Goodness me, that's almost 3 times as much. 9, 18, 27. Yes, in fact, it's just over 3 times as many members. That's most of Europe. Can you believe that most of Europe is in the European Union? What lunacy! The most recent additions being Romania, Bulgaria and Croatia. Well, how dare they? How dare countries ending in an A decide to join the European Union, regardless of whether or not they're in Europe? Absolutely mental. 5 more countries are in the queue to join, including Turkey, as we've already mentioned, totaling 89 million people. When they join, they'll have the same rights as other member states. This is basically being dressed up as a kind of like, when these 5 countries join, all 89 million people are just going to leave and bear down on the UK. That is what this is being dressed up as. There are 5 countries with a total population of 89 million people. If we were to stay in the European Union and those 5 get to join the European Union, then the UK population is going to grow by 89 million people and there are going to be 5 countries completely deserted. Give me a break. The European Union has changed enormously since the UK joined the common market in 1973. Goodness me, the common market. Don't deal with those plebeians. We prefer the corrupt market. The EU has taken control over more and more areas, such as our borders, our public services, and VAT. Basically, what it's saying is that a lot of the laws that govern those sorts of things here in the UK are actually decided in Belgium, where the European Union headquarters are, and that's the same for the whole of the EU. Basically, those sorts of laws are governed for the whole EU in Belgium. So even France and all the rest of it, those laws are decided in Brussels. EU law overrules UK law. It's a very ambiguous sentence that makes it sound like absolutely every single UK law is decided in Brussels, which I don't think is the case. I think there's still a great deal of laws that are made here in the UK that are decided in Parliament with David Cameron's approval. What does he know? Also, intervention from the Queen. Don't know why she gets to say. This stops the British public from being able to vote out the politicians who make our laws. Oh, well, hang on a minute. No, wait, that sounds interesting, because I don't want any of the politicians who make our laws at the moment, because they know nothing. The new deal David Cameron negotiated recently can be overturned by the European Court after our referendum. What deals has David Cameron been making with the EU? Maybe some deal with the Danish to get cheap bacon or something. The EU costs us at least £350 million a week. That's enough to build a new NHS hospital every week. But they're not going to get built, are they? Let's face it, the money, like if we were to leave, that £350 million a week, that ain't going to go on the NHS. That ain't going to go into the areas where it's needed, is it? If we're truly honest. Okay, as citizens of the UK, we know in our deepest, darkest atoms of our being, and maybe even the shallowest, brightest atoms of our being as well, every single fibre of us knows that £350 million a week is not going to get spent in the areas it needs to. Some of it, maybe a couple of quid here and there, but £350 million a week is going straight to politicians, CEOs, corporate giants, all that sort of thing. Call me cynical, because I freaking am. Right? I don't think that 350 million is going to go anywhere that it needs to go. It's going to go straight into the pockets of people who do not need it, rather than into the services of the people that do. We get less than half of this money back, and we have no control over how it's spent. That's decided by politicians and officials in Brussels, not by the people we elect. It wouldn't make a blind bit of difference, would it? I'm saying I'm very jaded when it comes to politics. Very cynical and very jaded. We get less than, £175 million back to us from the EU through various services and things that they provide to us for being members. Less than half of our value there is given back to us. And it says we have no control over how it's spent. Assuming we got the full amount, it's exactly what I was just saying. We're still not going to get any say in how that's spent. I don't get a say in how my taxes are spent. I just get a letter come through saying this is what your taxes have been spent on. Given the choice, I wouldn't spend any of my taxes on foreign aid, and children in need and stuff like that. I don't believe that works. That's a whole separate issue. That's for a completely different video. If we got £350 million a week back, you're still not going to get any say in how that's spent. Politicians are still going to decide how that's spent, and they're going to spend it on nice new cars and fancy 12th homes, rather than what we think it should be spent on, like hospitals and helping the poor. You don't have to be a member of the EU to trade with it, but I think the benefit of being in the EU is, I think it's basically kind of mates rates. Countries across the world trade with the EU without being members of it. Switzerland is not in the EU and exports even more to the EU than we do. Oh, well, good for the Swiss. They got more stuff worth exporting. You tried Swiss chocolate? It's amazing. Whereas what have we got to export? Chicken tikka masala. What does England even make? What's made here? Beef. What else is made here in the UK? Apart from broken fire extinguishers. IT crowd reference. Enjoy it. Some big banks and multinationals think the EU is in their interest. That's a great pun. I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but that's a great pun. Banks charge interest. Yeah. Okay. I don't understand a lot about importing and exporting, so I'm just going to basically gloss over this point without mocking it too much, because I feel like I'll be making a fool of myself trying to comment on things I don't understand. Having said that, I think I've done pretty well so far. While we're in the EU, the UK isn't allowed to negotiate our own trade deals. It's because we do a terrible effort of it. The head of trading in the UK needs to be a Moroccan. You ever seen the haggling that goes on in Morocco? That's the only way you can get things out there. You say, oh, I want a bag of chips in Morocco. Because why not? You go to a Moroccan shop and say, I want a bag of chips. How much? Name your price. Oh, okay, well, like 150, I'll give them to you for £2. 160, 190, and that's how you do it. You just barter like that. We need Moroccans. So maybe it's a good thing that the EU takes control of it. This means we currently have no trade deal with key allies such as Australia, New Zealand or the USA, or important growing economies like India, China or Brazil. We don't want anything from Australia because it will come infested with poisonous animals. New Zealand, where do we get our lamb from? You know, let's be fair. I've seen New Zealand lamb in shops. Apparently it's amazing. So we've got some sort of trade going on there. We probably don't want one with the USA either. Because I think that's why our gun crime is so low. Too soon? There's been a lot of shootings in the media recently. Maybe that's a joke for the outtakes. I'll put a sensitive joke warning thing up for that. I think that's similar to the previous one. I don't know much about trade, so I can't comment much more on it without being facetious and resulting to semi-racist jokes about poisonous Australian animals. If I could think of a really horrible Australian celebrity, that would have been such a good joke. That would have been such a good joke right there. But I can't think of any horrible Australian celebrities. I can only think of famous Australian people, but none of them I'd particularly describe as a poisonous animal. So the last point, okay, this is a Remain leaflet, and then you just say, there are risks in voting either way. You're supposed to be convincing me to vote Leave, the same way this one was trying to convince me to vote Remain. Don't just then go, but. Don't just shrug your shoulders. You know, what was we saying earlier about that thing? Experts can't decide, so how the hell are you supposed to? Well, now I'm even more bloody clueless, aren't I? Experts, politicians and businesses are divided. People have to weigh up the risks and potential benefits of each course of action for themselves. Is that basically a get-out clause? Is that basically to absolve, from what I can gather, the BBC at the moment of any responsibility for any negative repercussions should we leave? Is that that's just a get-out clause? That's ridiculous. So now we've got a map on the back which actually helps fill in some of the blanks for my clueless geography, my geographical cluelessness. This this is a very interesting map, isn't it? So as you can see, we've got the UK all the way over on like the left there, and then countries 1, 2, 3 and 4 representing Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro and Serbia. And that is they are definitely in Europe. So they're surely allowed to join the European Union. You know, as we were saying earlier, it seems kind of ridiculous that they should go, well, you're in Europe, but, you know, we're not going to let you join. What's the point? And then you've got Turkey represented by number 5. I would not have said that was Europe. I would have started saying that ventures into Asia. My favourite bit of this map is the fact that it highlights Syria and Iraq as being borders with Turkey. The title of the map, countries set to join the EU: Albania, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia and Turkey. By the way, here's Syria and Iraq, you know, those countries where all the trouble is happening at the moment, where there's all sorts of terrorism and blah 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 blah.
If that isn't scaremongering propaganda, I don't know what the hell is. There is absolutely no need to have the fact that Syria and Iraq are borders with Turkey. Hey, did you know that Greece is on a border with Albania and Macedonia? We don't want that to happen because Greece, you know what happened when they tried the euro, it all crashed through. God, we don't want any negativity coming from there. Switzerland borders Austria and Italy. Well, God, we know that Italy was against us in World War II and we all know what happened in Austria. It makes no sense. Other than creating fear. Making people scared and panic so that they vote to leave. Remain, we just had Martin. And to be fair, it's quite scary not knowing that who this Martin is, but apparently he's the only one who has all the power to vote in this thing. That's quite scary, to be fair, but that is just pure unadulterated scaremongering. If we let Turkey in, that's close to a danger zone. It is tugging on people's fears. People are scared of all sorts of terrorist-related activity that has been portrayed on television, in newspapers, and all that sort of thing about ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all those kind of terrorist sects, the Taliban, which I think was actually Afghanistan, not Iraq, my mistake. All those fear-inspiring organisations we're led to believe originate in Syria and Iraq. And what I think they're trying to do with this map is saying, well, look, Turkey's going to get in to the European Union. It's only a step away from Syria and Iraq. They're right next door, which means that if we let Turkey into the EU and those freedom of movement through borders, Syrians and Iraqis are going to move into Turkey and then they're just going to be able to go wherever the hell they want throughout the European Union. And we all know that that's going to be bad. We don't want any Syrian or Iraqi terrorists coming over here. It's just pure scaremongering tactics, and that is shameful. Shameful of the Leave campaign to do that. Shameful. Absolutely despicable. That's what the entire of the media does. Is I've getting sick of saying the phrase, it just tars everyone with the same brush. There are so many decent Syrians and Iraqis out there, and it's so many decent people, but there are the minority ruins it for the majority. You have got people in this country that believe that every single Syrian is a terrorist, people that believe that every single Iraqi is coming over here to behead someone. There are people here that think that, and that's horrible. There are people here, not just here, in America, all over the world, that think that every single member of a particular sect of society are out to get them, and then they treat them so maliciously. And it's horrible. You know, it's no wonder that the world is so divided and so broken because of things like this. Now we have a graph because, hey, nothing says statistic like a graph. We've got a graph of the amount of money we have sent to the European Union, which we know about because apparently it already costs us £35 million a week, as it has said many times. And it also clarifies that that's enough to buy a new NHS hospital every week, which we're again already aware of. This is just preying on the insecurities. It's kind of going, hey, UK, you're poor at the moment. A lot of people in the UK are poor. A lot of people are not. And the people that are not, generally, are the ones that deserve to actually be poor. But that's enough of that. There's a lot of people in the country that are poor at the moment. And that's because all of your money is going to the European Union. So much of it, in fact, that we could get a new hospital every single week. We're not gonna, but we could. It's just preying on insecurities. And then we got this last little bit down the bottom. Imagine the question was the other way around. Imagine the vote on 23rd of June is whether we should join the EU. Hypothetically, if we weren't in the European Union, would we join? Consider these things. The Euro crisis. You know, think about how terribly the euro is doing at the moment in the currency exchange. we would be using the pound. Now all of a sudden the opportunity to join the European Union has come up. Would we still be able to keep the pound? Because we've still got the pound at the moment. You know, if it was the other way around, theoretically, we should still have the pound. So I don't know if that's necessarily a valid point. The migration crisis. Would there be so much of a migration crisis if we weren't in the EU? Because assuming we weren't beforehand and we had control of our borders, then we would be able to say no. So there wouldn't necessarily be a migration crisis in this country at the moment. If there is one, I don't really know. So if there was going to be, or if there was a migration crisis, it would happen when we joined the EU, and it wouldn't be instantaneous. So I don't know if that's a valid point. New countries like Turkey and Serbia being lined up as new member states. Why select those two? That's the first question I'm asking. Why would you just pick those two? Because Turkey and Serbia, they're interesting countries. Think about watching the news. How many news stories from the past year can you tell me happened in Albania, Macedonia or Montenegro? I'll give you some time to think. The ticking clock in the background will help. Now tell me how many interesting stories you can think of from Turkey and Serbia. Maybe not so many from Serbia. But hey, it sounds like Syria. So we're just going to pick that in there because fear us! Turkey because it's near those countries that you should fear above all else. That's my first point. My second one is those are being lined up as new countries. But the whole point of this hypothesis is that we're being lined up for a new country. Would you vote to join the European Union? Kind of missing the target on what this whole referendum's about now. If you wouldn't, vote leave on June 23rd. There we go. That sums up the referendum propaganda that I have received. I feel like I've had more of a dig at the Leave campaign than I have the Remain campaign, but that's because the Leave campaign had a lot more information on there. I've tried to be reasonably balanced. All in all. I don't know why. I mean, you can probably guess which way I voted anyway. I voted to Remain. Just for those of you that are curious and for those of you that might have guessed wrong, I voted to stay in the EU because I think it's generally going to be a better position for us. I don't know if that came across in my rants or not, but there we go. I voted to Remain because I think leaving is a stupid idea. I don't know that much about what's going on. These leaflets haven't helped in the slightest. Sometimes inaction is the best action, and I feel like leaving would be stupid. So I voted to stay. This was supposed to be a vlog, but I've ended up 2 episodes of Come Dine With Me have gone through, right? That's an hour's worth of time. I've spent an hour talking about these things, right? That's too long to be a vlog. This is just going to have to be a standalone video. I'm looking forward to editing this though. I'll see you in the next ranty moany thing that we have to vote on. Yay! I will see you sometime.